everyone, it's Book of Katherine, and today we are going to talk marriage again, but we're going to talk about getting engaged. Why are we going to do that? Well, I had a video that I taped a while ago called Marriage, 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 and I never posted it. I was just like, man, I'm talking about marriage a lot at the time. And then I saw that PewDiePie got engaged. PewDiePie got engaged. If you don't know who PewDiePie is, he is #1 YouTuber, like right now, as of now, like 68 million subscribers, real subscribers. Real subscribers, not like the fake ones, like the other. They shall not be named. So anyway, so congratulations, PewDiePie, even though you did it 5 months ago. So I missed that video. So anyway, congratulations to him and his girlfriend. So on getting engaged, yay. So and I wanted to, and I realized that I have been watching other videos and I have been wanting to do this video, but his video just convinced me. I was like, okay, because I watched their video and they were doing a test on like, you know, should you be together? And I was like, yeah, I definitely need to do this video. Because people are also sending in questions to like Louder with Crowder. They're sending in really, really good questions on Real Talk or some kind of segment he has. They're asking great relationship questions. And they're actually asking a lot of questions. Should my girlfriend and I get married? I'm thinking about staying with this girl. Should I get married? Should I not get married? And I realized that in my video about Tommy Sotomayor and standards about being oh my gosh, I'm not saying why I'm in this. Oh my gosh. So I am wearing this because a couple, not just because PewDiePie got engaged, #1 YouTuber got engaged. No, actually a friend of mine, actually two friends of mine, two friends in my circle just got married and I couldn't go. And so this is what I would have worn to their wedding. And I'm really sad that I didn't get to go. Really sad because they're really close. They're very close friends of mine and I don't know, they just deserve the very, very best. And so I wanted to wear something for them in celebration. So they're off and I'm very, very happy for them. So anyway, so I wanted to wear what I would have worn to the wedding and yes, so that I'm wearing for them. And then, yeah. So anyway, so that's why I'm wearing this. So continuing on, you can't see the rest of it. I swear it looks really bomb. I swear it's a really bomb dress. So anyway, continuing on. So let's talk about, so that's why weddings and I'm wearing what would have worn, you get it. All right. So I said in that, I was like, you don't know what you need. You have a list of things. And what I was talking about is like these standards of like, do you like museums and do you like this? And also I've heard things like, now I've heard weird things about faith, about this one guy told a great joke that had spoken in the UN and he did this great speak at the Oslo Freedom Fest, but he made a joke about this one faith and they were talking about all the like denominations of a faith and it goes into all these denominations and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're that divided, like this divided, like every single area of society is divided. It doesn't matter like what area you're in, it's really become divisive. Like we even heard like there's a guy at work, he wanted to wear a Halloween costume and we're talking not 15 years ago he would have worn that costume. He'd been wearing it for like 25 years or whatever and everyone loved the costume. Everyone loved the costume. It was a huge celebration, but now can't wear the costume because it is not PC. Like, and that is where I keep saying we're going along China. It is something, and someone on a megaphone, everyone loved it. Everyone loved it. And this guy's moved up and down the East Coast. Like it has been a thing, like no matter where. He's been in Florida and down up or whatever. Doesn't matter what demographic. Doesn't matter if it's DC or not. It's been like, doesn't matter what color of skin. They've all loved this costume. But now, because the people on the megaphone say that it's not okay, and they've declared certain things not okay, can't wear it anymore because somebody else has declared that this is now the standard, which is exactly how it's done in China. Like there's a megaphone, Big Brother's like, and now we shall no longer do this. And everyone says, okay, that's out. And they fire a few people for it. And that's it. It's no longer accepted in society. And we're getting narrower and narrower to the point where everyday people cannot wear their Halloween costumes they've worn, you know, they became popular. Like, you know, it's just like, I'm just like, you gotta be, you know, things that would win Halloween contests, you know, for 25 years that were fully accepted in American society and now are suddenly outlawed. That's a big deal. That's a big trickle down. That's a big that's communist regimes right there. We're just getting, I told you, the script is getting narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower, and it's going to continue that way. So I realized that in that society that I should really talk about getting married and whether or not you should get married, what you should look for in a partner. And I was like, you don't know what you need. There are some base things. There are some baseline things that you definitely should look for in a partner. I know I've said it before where you should be looking for your best friend, for sure. But I was saying things like, you don't know if you need like this kind of, this kind of thing, or like, do they like, art, or do they like going out to museums, or do they like soccer or not? Like, I used to love dancing. Like, I loved dancing, right? And I used to know a ton of people who were like, I won't marry them unless, they're a good dancer, or, they have to be able to be a good dancer, or they have to dance with me, or they have to want to be my partner. And I had seen enough marriages break up over dancing. I'd seen it all over. Social dancers, competitive dancers. I'd seen it all throughout the ballroom community. All these people had and I was just like, yeah, I don't think so. And so I was like, and so all I said was, I just want someone who loves watching me dance. That was it. I was like, as long as they enjoy watching me dance, they don't have a problem with me. Because I would get women into, like, I would hear women all the time that said, you'd hear them at 80 years old say that I used to love to dance, and then I got married and my husband didn't like dancing, and so I didn't dance, and then he died, and then she went back to dancing, and I didn't want to be that woman. And I was like, I just, but I don't know, maybe I would have given up dancing or whatever. Luckily he was a dancer. I never thought about that. I guess that's something, I don't know, but I just, I don't know. I didn't think about that, but I just happened to meet them in that, but I don't know. So that was why I was like, I just want them to love watching me, like not have a problem watching me. They don't need to be able to dance. They don't have to be able to, they don't have to be a good dancer. I don't require them to take dance lessons. I don't require any of this. I don't require them to dance with me. They don't want to be my partner. They just have to be okay, like, with me dancing. Like, that's all because I don't want to take away, which really meant, do they love me for me? Because I was a dancer. I loved dancing. I mean, it still makes me shine brighter than anything in my life. It's still dancing just makes me radiate. That and being on stage. Those two things, when I was doing presenting and when I was doing performing, those two performances things, I just radiate. I went into a television studio once and my husband was like, you just lit the place on fire. So like television, I was just like, all right, turn on the cameras. Like, I just do well in those situations, right? That's why this is so easy. It's just very, very natural. So, but try and marry someone who's like, well, you can't ever do this. It's like asking me not to be me. And so that is what I would say, is that number one, I would say things to look for in someone is someone who is your best friend, who you can be yourself with, who you can actually be yourself with, who loves you for being you. Now, there is a caveat to that. When I said you get to change 3 things about your man or whatever, that doesn't include, I mean, things like the toothpaste or things where they drop their clothes or whatever. I don't mean things like addictions. Like, if there's an addiction in that will tear apart any relationship. Like, if you have an addiction or your partner has an addiction, or if they have another relationship, like if they are on their phone with their mother every day, you've got a problem. Like, if there is a codependency with somebody else in their life, not a healthy relationship. Like, that's something you don't want to dip into that. So if they do have that, you have to see if they're willing to work on the relationship with counseling. So I would say premarital counseling is like a must if you have issues like that, because you have to be aware that whatever little issues you have with family or codependent issues, the moment you get married, it amps up. Because whatever, the person that you're with, they're in your friend category. And the moment you get married, they become in your family category. And suddenly they become family to you, and it triggers all your family patterns, everything that happened in your family, that comes up. And so that person becomes family to you, and all of that stuff comes up. And if that stuff isn't resolved, it will rear its ugly head. And so if you don't have stuff resolved with your mother, you'll take it out on your wife. If you don't have stuff resolved with your father, you'll take it out on your husband, things like that. So If you don't have stuff resolved with your childhood, you raise your kids the same way. So I always say, like, it's a great thing if you are dedicated to mental health, that you also find someone who's interested in mental health, which is really self-betterment. Everyone focuses on the gym, you know, are you into, and I'm like, what about mental fitness? Like, are you, and I know there's not a lot of that really like readily available. Like, a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists out today are total crap. Like, total crap. I know people are like, oh, why would you go to Dr. Phil? Have you listened to Dr. Phil? Have you listened to how many people these people have visited? They've 50 psychiatrists, and they all gave the wrong diagnosis or the wrong medications. Like, one kid had been on 50 medications by the time he was like 12. Like, the medical industry out there is a sham. You have to find a really good, you have to be able to leave a therapist and go on and find good therapists and things like that, which you can, but you only find that if you're willing to, like, get up after like 3 or 2 or 1 meeting and move on and look for the next one. Most people just think, oh, it's me, and they stick with them. No, when you leave an appointment, you have to leave hearing the same thing. You know, like, you have to hear the same thing. You have to be like, oh, I heard him say this. Oh, I heard him say this too. And that should be the same thing with all things. When you leave a conversation or a dinner table, if they both hear the same thing, that, man, I need to take these out. I don't know what, it's the first time I've worn this dress. So, crap, I apologize. So I apologize for not being so chic. Anyway, so, and then politics are a really big thing today. Politics are so big. As far as I'm concerned, politics today are the exact same thing as ethics. If you are a leftist, then you are a communist. That's a very different ethical standpoint as like, it's about freedom of man versus, you know, the state. You know, does the state want to regulate everything, or do you want people to have freedom? So if you're on those two polar things, those are two different ethical systems. You know, I figured that out. I was like, well, my husband and I don't agree. It's disagree. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's ethics. Like, that is the ethics thing. Like, that's very interesting. Like, it turned out like the thing that I needed ended up being an ethical thing that affected politics. Because my husband was like, oh, like, well, we actually do agree on, like, politics. And I was like, yeah, but we never talked about politics. And it just turns out that ethics do affect politics. So you can't be like, oh, well, we're both in the same religion, so does it matter that we disagree on politics? Yeah. I would say your politics tell you what religion, like, more than because religion is just be culture. Your religion, a lot of religion is culture, like what you grew up in. So you grew up in that, right? And so you stay in that. Just, you know, there's a lot of religions like that. Like, we grew up in it and we stay in it. That's a lot of huge demographics of people are like that. Huge. Like, I've seen so many Catholics grow up and they go back to it. I kid. So I apologize to Catholics out there. I assume you had a very different experience than I did. So I can only assume that you had a very different experience than I did. So, but like I said, like, it's a very different experience than I did. I had just very different experience. So, But you know, like, towards the end, like, I try to make the best of it. I remember when I was growing up in the Catholic Church, like, I was required to go every Sunday. And I remember as I started to become my own person, and I started hanging out and doing my own activities in school and started escaping the house a bit, like escaping the prison, and started getting out because they were like, well, you have to get like these prison grades or whatever and stuff like that. So it required me to get activities on. Well, that was great because it got me out of the house and it got me involved in all these activities and got me socially interacting with people. Thank you, you know, whatever. So I got out there and what it did is I was like, well, let me try and put a positive spin on this Catholic thing, right? So I tried to, like, put positive things. And you know what was really interesting about that? I mean, this is what was interesting, is that they were having this big thing and they had this big meeting of like, oh, let's go and let's all meet together, like this big, huge revival. They had this big revival in our town for the Catholic. And they all got in, and I had been to college. No, wait, no. How did I... Oh gosh, it must have been... Why was I there? I'm trying to... I know I had taken world religions by then. So I'm trying to get my time. I don't know. But I had to be there. Maybe I went there for my mom to make her feel better. I did a lot of things for my mother. Because I didn't leave the family for a long time, unfortunately. Maybe it's when I went back for my husband. Off track. Don't ever get back involved with your family to make somebody else happy. Don't ever do that. So anyway, so I went and I sat down and I listened to all these people talk, and they were like, so what's the Catholic faith to you? And I swear, listen to them, and each one of them described a different faith in the world history class that I had just taken. And I was just like, they were like, one described like Zen, one described, I can't remember all the world religions, but I literally was like, I'm listening to my textbook, every chapter in my textbook go by. And I didn't hear a single one, not a single one. It was hysterical. I was just like, check, check, check. By the time I was like, I wonder if I'm going to hear anything related to Hindi. And then it was like, check. And I was just like, wow. Every single one. I didn't say anything, but so it's just like, I can understand if people can be that. And that's what I mean. If you can have that, but still continue going, then it's a culture. Does that make sense? Then it's a culture. It's not necessarily an ethic or a religion. It's a culture. Does that make sense? So then when you get to politics, I think that's when your ethics really come out. Like what you really think, like that's when it really comes out. And because then you get into the nitty gritty of like how other people are treated. Like, do you really have freedom of speech and freedom of religion? Because the Democrats are voting against freedom of speech and freedom of religion. You know, do you want the state to control everything? Or do you think that man should be free? You know, should it be over communist, or should it be, liberty, right? So like the founders intended or whatever. Those are really like the two principles, whether or not our politicians vote that way. But like politics are really what people argue about. That's a big deal. You should agree on those things because they will come later in life. Believe you me. So if you are left, don't think you can get around with somebody over here because it's cute or funny, or you think you can get one over on them. It goes deeper than you think. And the same goes for people over here. It goes deeper than you think. That is the core of their ethics, right? If you're able to have a debate, it means they know the truth of it, right? A lot of people here in the middle don't know what the other side believes. My goodness gracious. I don't know if this is just another thing falling off. All right. So I would say that yes, you have to care about, there are certain things that are basic, but those are all things that are internal. Those are all very, very core values that are internal. And I would say that's a very, very important thing. And premarital counseling goes through that. I remember like a questionnaire for premarital counseling that we had to do. It asked really tough questions. They were not essay questions. They asked questions like, it was some psychology thing. And it asked a tough question like, it said, who's the most powerful person in the relationship? And it was just like him or her. And it didn't give us, we couldn't say equal. Did not ask questions like that all the way through. It was literally like, who would you say holds the most power in it? Those were really rough because they made you look. Hard. It's good because the thing is that things may be hunky-dory now, but marriage goes the whole life through, and you want to kind of look at those things now before you get on down the line. And that's kind of the way it is with relationships. People get into relationships because they're just like, this feels good now. But the thing is, this goes on longer than you think, and it affects you more than you think. It schedules things in your brain. It attaches things to smells, sights, sounds, and relationships, all these little interactions that happen, and it kind of programs you more than you think. That's what I was saying is younger sex, right or wrong. And I'm just like, a lot of people have sexual experiences that they don't choose to have. Like, I certainly know my earliest sexual experiences were not my choice. You're going to tell me those were wrong? Like, those were not my choice. And can you say, like, according to the law, anything under the 18 is literally, legally, the child does not have the ability to consent. Because the research is out there that says that under that age, the research says they don't have the ability to consent. So, you know what I mean? Like, how can you, and the whole thing is that like, you end up it does things in your brain. It lays like a literal love map of what you're going to want and attract for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? For the rest of your life. So all these little choices affect you more than you realize. So it does make a difference. You do want to be careful and making those choices, and you don't want to be flippant about it. So things like education are the same thing. Like you want to have someone you can have a conversation with. You want to be able to talk with them. If all the power in the house dies, are you going to be able to talk with them? If everything goes quiet, can you? And then I would say, can you laugh with them? Everyone says they want a sense of humor. No, really what you want is someone with your sense of humor. And that's why I liked the PewDiePie video with his now fiance. Because I didn't even have to, I just was like, oh, they're going to make it, because they laughed through the video. Like, they were worried. They were worried when they were doing it because they answered some of the questions. They were bringing up issues. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know where this idea that you have to be a perfect couple to make it. No, the whole beauty of relationships is that you can have off things, but how do you handle it? And what they did is when they had off things, they laughed about it. They would like nudge each other, and they thought it was funny. Instead of getting know you. And you know that. You've seen couples like that. They're like, do you? They're like, no, you don't. No, you know you don't. You know you don't. When you see that kind of a thing, you see these little controls of like, no, don't, and they, instead of like a giggly or a tease, whatever, and like they're having fun in life together. When the times are good, is it fun and teasing or whatever, or is there tension of like, when's it going to go off the rails? If there's ever tension, and that's the last thing I'm going to say. That is the last thing I'm going to say of whether or not you should get married, is that, quite frankly, if you're dating and you fight, no, that's not the person for you. No. Why? Because when you are dating, unless you go through things, for example, unless you like own a home together and the house gets flooded. Unless like he runs over your cat or she destroys something of your, like, unless not she runs over your cat or whatever, but like if there is something catastrophic that happens, like you lose your kid, or you lose your business, or you lose a family member, and tensions get that bad, or someone loses a job, that's when the fights would occur. If you're just dating and going throughout a normal dating life, and if you're fighting over a candy wrapper on the floor of a car, or if you're fighting about who's texting who, and fighting about little itty bitty things like that, let me promise you, it is only going to start here, and it's only going to it's only going to spiral bigger. No, honey. No. And if you ever feel like you can't speak, no. Whoever you're with should make you feel like talking. They should make you feel like talking. They should make you feel like coming out of your shell, not in. There is this great thing in psychology. There's this great thing in psychology called expansion and contraction. Okay? And this is why I said I like PewDiePie and his fiance, because they expanded when they were with each other. Like they expanded and they laughed. Like they expanded. They kind of came out a bit, right? So if they'd been together a while, so they're kind of already a bit expanded, right? But if you watch them before they got together, you will notice that they're probably more contracted than they are after they've been together a while. They brought each other out of each other's shells. They're more comfortable and they became more contracted. Their personalities came out. When you are a person and we tend to be, especially in this society and the way that we're raised, so many of us are abused. So many of us come from emotional trauma. Not that they did or anything, but society itself beats down on us or whatever. And we tend to be contracted. Now, I was highly contracted. I was like, it was almost impossible or whatever. But so contracted that I wasn't even in my own skin, right? And that's why they tell you to like touch the Eskimos, like touch the skin of babies. Like that's why they rub oil on the arms. That's why it's so good. And that's why they talk about attachment parenting and holding the child and keeping the child like close in bed and things like that. Because you want the child to feel their own body and get them embodied, right? And then you slowly let them go. But at first, the child needs to feel where they end. They need to know where they end, and then they need to know where their skin is. So they get attached to their own skin and know where it ends, right? And then they slowly let go, right? And so what happens is that if you're contracted and inside your body, what happens is if the person you're with should make you want to like come out towards the edges of your skin, like your personality expands and you feel like you're safe enough to be out in your skin and you feel like you're in a safe zone with them, safer than anyone else. And so it's kind of like you found a partner in life that you want to feel safe with. If you ever feel like contracting, like not saying something, like my husband, when I first met him, he was with someone, he never spoke with them. He was like the silent mummy when I met him. So those are just things. Then I'll post my marriage video, but I thought I'd post this first. And I want to say congratulations to my friends on their glorious marriage, because it was glorious. It was absolutely glorious, and it's glorious. It's glorious. And then congratulations to PewDiePie and his girlfriend, not his girlfriend, his fiance. I know you have to get used to that. And yeah, that's the thing about getting married. I was thinking about it. When you get married, you take your husband's name, and that was so hard for me. That was so hard for me to do because I had been this huge, like I had really built a name for myself, and it was so hard to take his name. And now I'm so happy to have his name. And I realized it's because I became a different person. And PewDiePie said this. He said, I thought it would be the same after I got engaged. And he said it was better. He's like, something did change and it got better. And I know when my husband asked me, I was scared. I said there were 2 times I was scared, walking down the aisle and when he asked me. But then when I said yes, it got better. I did. I expanded in my arms. Like even when I just talked about it, my whole arms just went and expanded. There should be this like, you know, hold on. And what I realized is that my parents gave me that name, this horrible, horrible house that I lived in. Like, that wasn't my own name. That was my family's name. And I chose my husband. That was my choice. I wasn't taking my husband's name. I was taking the name that I chose. For the first time, I was choosing my name. You know, I no longer had a name that I had no choice in. I made a choice. And I made a choice to choose someone that expanded me. So now I chose to be part of this. And he feels the same way. He knows things changed. And sharing, you know, sharing his name with someone changes things for him. You know, it adds to his name and he doesn't feel like it's attached to his family, especially moving across, you know, the United States has really changed the name for us. It feels like a different name. It's just become a different name to us. It's become our name. And so we're different now. And, you know, you always have an option of changing your own name or whatever while you're on your own. But that name isn't really your own. It's the one your family gave you. It's your inheritance that they gave you. And when you choose someone, you know, you don't have to change your name. I didn't change my name for a little while. And then I eventually did, like, over time. And he didn't care. He didn't care. I mean, that's the thing, is that we're an equal society. And no matter what the feminist movement says, like, our society is just that far that he was just like, whatever, whenever you want to or whatever. And I just slowly did over time. I started using it more and more and more. And then finally I realized, like, what am I doing? Like, this is my choice. This is who I chose, you know, and this is my name. And now I'm proud of it. Does that make sense? Like, I'm so proud because I'm just like, this is who I am. Like, I see it more as this name is my expanded self. And it's like who I made for myself with him. And I couldn't have been it I can't be it without him. I just can't be it without him. And he helps me expand. And yeah, we work on codependency and everything. You want to be healthy and things like that. But joy should be the operative word in your relationship. And I always say this and I'll say it again. You know, if you want to find the right person, work on yourself and they'll come. Work on yourself. Find joy on your own. find joy on your own. Find your own joy and they'll come. They will come. All right. I love you guys and I'll talk to you later. Bye. Congratulations. Congratulations to my two loves. I was there in spirit.